Hello, everyone. This is Karen from Rasa. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This is Beyond the Release Notes, the monthly webinar from Rasa. And for the next 45 minutes, we'll be taking you through the latest product updates. So today we've got an exciting lineup of new features that were recently shipped in May. And we'll also give you a little bit of a preview of what's coming soon. If this is your first time joining us at a Beyond the Release Notes webinar, here's a quick little introduction. So Beyond the Release Notes happens once a month. Each time we invite a panel of speakers from the Rasa product, engineering, and research teams to talk about kind of the latest and greatest features and the company news. So if you're pressed for time, putting Beyond the Release Notes on your calendar every month is a great way to kind of keep tabs on everything that's new and exciting that's happening with Rasa. And with that, let's introduce our panel of speakers. So we've got Alan Nicol, Rasa's co-founder and CTO, Sam Gauss, senior software engineer, Chris Kedzie, machine learning researcher, and then Stacy Ballback from our marketing team. All right, so we have 4 deep dives up on the agenda today. First up, Alan's going to be taking us through a new tool for enterprise users called the Enterprise Readiness scorecard. Then we have Sam, who's planned a demo of the soon-to-be-released Rasa WebChat widget. Chris is going to be explaining conditional response variations, which just came out in Rasa Open Source 2.6. And then finally, Stacy is here to get us all hyped up for the L3 AI conference, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. So we'll end by bringing all of our panelists back on stage to take a round of questions from the audience. Before we get into all of that, let's talk through logistics and how you can participate during today's webinar. So first off, this session will be recorded. So if you need to hop off halfway through or want to catch up later, you can use the same link that you used to enter the webinar to log back in and watch the recording. And then for Q&A, we will be collecting questions at any time throughout the webinar. So go ahead and send in your question through the Q&A window. We'll collect those questions, and then we'll save them all until the end. And also just a quick note on navigating the event space. So the widgets that display the media player, the slides, and important links, they can all be moved around and resized, so you can kind of customize your view. We also had a few reports at our last webinar that the widgets get cut off on smaller screens, so you might want to resize your browser window just a little bit to make sure that nothing is kind of hiding on that right-hand side of the screen. So that is it from me. Next up, we have Alan, who's going to say a few words and then tell you all about the Enterprise Readiness scorecard. So Alan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks very much, Karen. Welcome again, everybody. Nice to have you all here, and great to have a chance to chat with you about some of the things coming out of the Rasa team over the last month. So before we do all of that, it's always a good moment to reflect when you hit a birthday. And it's now been 2 years, just over 2 years, since we first released Rasa X. It was a big milestone, of course, for the company, shipping this product, which really gave everybody the tools they needed to build a great, data set for their conversational AI. Kind of crazy to think we've had over 180 releases since then. That's an awful lot of getting things in before the deadline and doing QA and all the rest of it. But it's just a phenomenal effort from the team. I think we've seen that reflected in just the number of places where folks have downloaded it and started using it. Tremendous number of features and improvements that we've shipped since that first release, right? One of the big ones, of course, being integrated version control, and meaning that Rasa X works seamlessly with Git and the same way that you work with your assistant with Rasa Open Source. So I'm currently writing a blog post actually reflecting on the last 2 years and where we've been going and where we're going next and how it ties into some shifts that we've seen in the industry, which is wonderful. So be on the lookout for that. Should probably come out next week or something like that. and that'll go into a lot more detail about how the product has evolved and where it's going next. So just a quick note on things that we won't necessarily go into in a great amount of detail, but we had Rasa Open Source 2.6 go out recently. That included a new channel, the Twilio voice channel, which is really great because it means you can just hook up a phone number to your Rasa bot and start talking to it right away. It has a few additional settings compared to a normal Rasa channel. You get, things that are specific to a telephony use case, right? Like the amount of time that you wait for the user to respond, the initial prompt, all those kinds of things, whether you support button presses. So check out the docs. You can read more about how all of that works, but it's obviously very cool for any use case where you want to support user over the phone. Conditional response variations was also in 2.6. You'll hear quite a lot about that in just a minute from Chris. And then we had the 0.40.0 release of Rasa X and Enterprise, which added support for entity roles and groups, so that when you annotate entities, you can mark them as being part of a role and or part of a group. That's been a very popular feature in Rasa Open Source. It was an experimental feature for a long time, and now that we've added full support in Rasa X and Enterprise, it means we can also upgrade it to a fully supported feature and very soon remove the experimental tag from it. We've also done a bunch of improvements to the user experience of annotation, making it easier and clearer how to annotate entities, giving better feedback to the user, making it snappier and more responsive. So lots of little bits of friction we're just chipping away at. So I want to talk about a new thing that we included in the Rasa Enterprise offering, which is the Enterprise Readiness Scorecard. We ran it with a pilot set of customers over the last few months, and we're now rolling it out to everyone because of the success we've seen with it. And so the idea is to give a tool to teams to really understand, which part of their assistant is in good shape and is ready for going to production, and where they should really be spending their time if they're not quite ready yet, right? And so it's a very powerful way of just kind of quickly seeing, okay, maybe my CI/CD process is in great shape, but my training data health leaves a lot to be desired, right? And so the idea is really to say, okay, look, these are our strengths, these are our weaknesses, and give everyone a real North Star to work towards and say, look, we're going to prioritize our training data health for the next 6 weeks, and this is the target, and this is where we'd like to get to, and being able to measure that progress and have confidence that the work you're doing is delivering results and that your system is more robust and ready for production. So the way it works is we collect data from 3 different sources of information. So the first is that you go through a wizard, which asks you a bunch of questions about your CI/CD setup, what kind of processes you have in place. Then secondly, the tool will analyze your current project, right, that you have in your Git repo. It will look at things like the test coverage of your test stories, etc. And then it will also fetch a bunch of information from the Rasa Enterprise API, like warnings from the NLU Insights screen, and how much annotation you've been doing, how many real conversations you have in there. And it takes all of that information and then calculates your sort of readiness score. And the score is broken down into 4 subsections. So the maximum total score is 16. It's 4 times a score out of 4. And so the first one is what I already mentioned, your training data health, right? So do you have intents which are frequently, conflicting or confused with one another? Do you have intents which are frequently predicted with low confidence? Do you have areas where you just don't have enough training data? All those kinds of things. Success KPIs, it's really about how well are you tracking that your assistant is helping your end users, right? That they're really achieving the goals that they came to your assistant for. Then continuous integration, right? How sure are you when you make a change to your assistant, either because you're adding a new story or some new NLU data or changing your custom actions? How sure are you that you're not, introducing a regression or breaking something? How robust is your test coverage in your CI/CD pipeline? And then finally, of course, the continuous deployment, the other half of CI/CD is, do you have a good mechanism for rollbacks, for monitoring, for cascading rollouts of updates to new users. And if you have all of those things in place, then you're really in shape for a robust production deployment. And we work together with a success plan, which is something that we set up with our customers. And that's kind of, as we said, it's about setting targets and identifying the areas where you want to improve, where you want to invest time, and then setting targets for where you want to get within a specific time frame. So as I said, we started with a group of pilot customers. And I think, saw some really phenomenal results, which led us to then roll this out more generally to everybody. So one example here is a US-based health insurer. It's a very large company. And we started working with them with the scorecard to identify what are the areas of weakness and where are they already strong, right? And so we worked with them over the course of 6 weeks on the two things I identified from the scorecard where they were particularly weak. And so one was their training data health, and the other was the test coverage that they had. And so by working with them over the course of 6 weeks, we got the F1 score of their intent model from 0.8 up to 0.93. And we got the test coverage from just 28% all the way up to 80%, right? So really phenomenal difference in both of those KPIs. And that gave them confidence, of course, in the work that they'd done over the course of those 6 weeks, and also gave us confidence that this is a really great tool that we want to roll out to everybody. So if you're interested or you have a question about it, reach out to your account manager. They can tell you more. And if you want to get started just with a community project plan, you can check out this URL. And it's a sort of generic simplified version of the success plan that we use with our customers, and will lead to many of the same things that we're talking about here. So that's it. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll hand over to Sam, who's the next speaker.
Hello. I've lost the button that shows my face. Here it is. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alan. So yeah, I'm going to be showing you a little bit about something that we've been working on, which we're calling the WebChat widget. Let me just get my screen sharing. Make sure I'm sharing the right one. Excellent. So up until now, if you want to actually use a Rasa bot, then you need to implement your own code on top of the APIs that you kind of get once you install Rasa, or use a third-party widget that you can put onto your site. And what we wanted to do is provide something from us directly for you to be able to basically have a chat going with your Rasa bot as quickly as possible, and with a little bit of customization too. It is still very new, so there's a lot more customization to come probably, but I've got a little kind of demo rig here for you. Before I actually kind of click into it and show you what's going on, what you're going to be able to do is import you just use an HTML, import a script from a CDN that will load all of the code you need, and then you just need to put some HTML onto your page. If you look here, that's what it's going to look like. So something with a specific ID. At the moment, it's Rasa WebChat widget. That's probably what we'll go with, but who knows? And then you can give it some configuration via data attributes to kind of set it all up. And I've got a live rig here that changes as we go. And once your page loads, the bit of code that you imported from a CDN will find this div, and we'll use that to put a widget onto your site. And you can see that even though there's kind of one in this little box here, it's attached itself to the bottom right corner, as we'd expect. So just without any, with the default configuration, you can just start a conversation with a bot, and this is connected up to one of our internal bots, Sarah. And you can see here that we can have a conversation very quickly. But you can make a lot of changes as well if you want. Obviously, this is pointing to our server here, but this is where you would put the server that has your WebSocket endpoint. And if you've got JWTs enabled, you'd put that there. You can do things like set the colors on it. So you can see there at the bottom we're having that color there, but obviously it's still going to be purple until we hover over it. And so you can make all these changes here, changing the height of the disclosed widget and that kind of stuff. And yeah, obviously we'll grow the level of things that you can customize as we go. But yeah, so we're hoping to get this out really soon to all of you. And I can see already in the Q&A that someone is asking questions about it, which is great. And yeah, I mean, to answer that very quickly, at the moment it's just the WebSocket channel. So the initial offering is going to be just this kind of HTML classic widget that's done like that. But in the future, it should be pretty easy. We're going to offer it as a React component as well. So you'll just be able to import it and include it in your React project with broadly the same configuration. Well, exactly the same configuration that you see here, except we'll probably put this, camel case this. But yeah, so that's I just really wanted to kind of show you what's going on, just so you can see that it's coming and get excited about it. We can choose a little avatar background, and now as we speak, we'll see that this blue has been picked up in the avatar, but we can also change that picture. Yes, it will work with Rasa Open Source, and actually answering that question is a good opportunity for me to say, I don't really have that much to more prepared to demo because it really speaks for itself, but very happy to answer any questions. I don't know if we want to answer those questions now or at the end, probably now. So yes, it will work with Rasa Open Source. It actually doesn't have any reliance on Rasa X at all. I think, yes, it points straight to the Rasa Open Source Socket.io channel once you have it set up. Okay, right. I've been told that I should take more questions at the end, so I will stop encouraging any more by answering the ones that are there. But yeah, looking forward to getting it in people's hands and hearing more feedback. Who am I passing on to? Sorry. Oh, who's doing conditional response variations?
That's me.
Chris. All right, thanks, Chris.
No problem. Thanks, Sam. Hey, everyone. I'm Chris. And I'm going to talk through our new feature, conditional response variations, which we developed. So the feature allows you to select the response variation depending on the value of one or more slots. And this feature was designed to solve a problem that we see repeatedly where you have essentially the same story or same underlying story structure, but maybe the story, you want some cosmetic changes to the story, some slight tweaks and responses depending on maybe like the user account type or some other slot values that you know. And so a canonical example we've been using is like the account type, but I'll walk you through one of these stories. So you have 4 stories here, but they all have the same underlying structure. So the first thing that happens is the user logs in, then the bot says, hello, and offers the menu of things that the bot can do. And the user asks what they want to do. And then the bot replies, sure. And these stories all have the same underlying structure. They all have the same underlying structure, but where they differ is when you have a different slot setting. So if it's the first time the user is logged in, we may say something like "Thank you for signing up." If it's not the first time they've logged in, we may say "Welcome back." You could even change in the menu of options, the first time they log in, maybe they're more like introductory. In this case, we have a sort of fake insurance bot that's saying, learn how to file a claim, explain benefits. But maybe if it's their return, right, maybe you want to offer sort of more, options that are more appropriate, like check on an existing claim or file a new claim, et cetera. And so if you actually have to create, so here we just have 2 slots, with 2 values each. So there's like 4 possible combinations of them. And if you wanted this kind of variation, you would have to actually write out 4 different stories. If there's branching and other kinds of logic, this gets quickly pretty tedious to write out. And it becomes hard to manage all these stories. You could solve this by using a custom action, where you essentially boil down those 4 stories into one that looks like, login, action greet, action abilities. The user asks to have their benefits explained, and then the bot does the explaining of benefits. But we think that this potentially is frustrating for some users who want to have the non-technical user edit the responses directly, because you're kind of burying the selection logic of the responses inside custom action code. And that can be very limiting for the non-technical users, or hard to understand. It also, even for the technical user, you can't just look at your domain file and understand what the bot's going to say when. You actually have to look into the code and parse the logic. And that can be time-consuming and difficult to manage. So our new feature here, conditional response variations, allows you in the domain file to add this new condition field to the, there's a pointer there. That's cool. Yeah, so it adds this condition field to the domain file. And you can specify the slot that you want. You can add 1 or more slots here and the values of those particular slots. In this case, it's true. And when the response, in this case, utter greet, is triggered, we'll check to see if all these slot values match in the current state of the dialog. And if they do, then this response is eligible to be used. So when the isFirstLogin slot is set to true, we'll get, thank you for signing up. What do you need help with? If no conditional response matches, you can provide a default response that will be used. In this case, the default is, welcome back. What did you need help with today? So it's a pretty straightforward feature. It actually reduces the amount of machine learning that you need to do, or custom action codes that you need to write. And it will reduce the number of stories to 1 basic story, where you can now just write, instead of a custom action, you would write utter greet, utter abilities, utter explain benefits, and so on, as you normally would. And like I said, this actually reduces the amount of machine learning that you need to do. So it simplifies the number of training stories that need to be written. It reduces the amount of slot conditioning that you need to do, which is great because your models will learn the underlying stories faster. And we think that this is a sort of more transparent arrangement of where response selection happens. Because it can all be done in the domain file now, you can look at the domain file, and in one place you have all the responses that will be used. And eventually, when we integrate more tooling into Rasa X, this should be even easier for the non-technical user to make changes in this kind of response behavior. So yeah, please check out the docs for more details. You can do, I've only showed conditioning on 1 slot, but you can have multiple slots. They don't have to be Boolean. They can be any particular value. And that's about it for me. So I guess we'll take questions at the end of the presentation, and I'll hand it over to Stacy now. So thank you for watching.
Hey everyone, thanks Chris. I'm Stacy and I work on growth marketing at Rasa, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about our upcoming virtual industry conference, L3AI. Slides. We've confirmed over 40 speakers from Forrester, T-Mobile, Salesforce, NVIDIA, and a lot more. Alan, our CTO, is going to give a keynote about conversation-driven development at scale. Will McKeon-White is an analyst from Forrester, and his research is on customer service automation and conversational AI. Will's going to share 5 best practices for chatbot success. Heather Nullis from T-Mobile gave an awesome talk at the Rasa Summit earlier this year. Check it out on YouTube if you missed it. She's going to be back for L3AI to talk about agile implementation for high ROI chatbots. I can't list all the speakers now, there's too many, but check out the L3AI agenda and lineup. There should be a link in the webinar console. Recordings will be available to ticket holders after the event, but we highly recommend that you tune in live to get the full experience and to take advantage of the networking, real-time commentary. We're going to do merch giveaways. There's going to be live speaker Q&A, partner booths, and there's going to be a Rasa booth, so you can come say hi to us and get your questions answered. We're going to be live tweeting the event as well, so please join the conversation. We really want to hear from you. L3AI is going to take place all day on Thursday, June 17th. Keeping in mind that our community is global, we've made the event free and virtual and arranged the schedule to allow as many people to tune in from as many time zones as possible. We want L3AI to be accessible for the entire conversational AI community. Again, if you aren't able to tune in live, register anyway. Sessions will be recorded and available on demand for everyone who registers. And it's free, so why not join us? Last year, we had over 4,000 registrants from all over the world, over 40 sessions, and our main theme was around the challenges of going from POC to production and how you can address those challenges with virtual assistants. This year, our main theme is scaling and how you can meaningfully transform the customer experience with conversational AI. We've grouped our sessions into 3 tracks: Imagine, Create, and Scale, covering the full life cycle of building virtual assistants. The Imagine track will feature customer and market analysis stories, talks about the design, prototype, and POC stages, discussions around customer service pain points and how virtual assistants are uniquely equipped to address those challenges and pain points. The Create track will feature talks from researchers, product owners, and developers around standing up conversational products, excuse me, lifecycle management, evaluation, and the tools and software that help you build and implement customized, truly interactive, fully contextual AI assistants. And finally, the Scale track will focus on just that, scaling, whether it's a growing user base, scope expansion, building out internal teams to work on these assistants, the infrastructural complexity that comes with all of this growth, managing multiple channels, languages, and chatbots, multi-bot orchestration, plus how to set meaningful benchmarks and measure success, something that our team gets a lot of questions about, important considerations like customer satisfaction, security, and just generally how to scale your assistants to provide the best experience for your end users. Again, everything I just covered is free and taking place virtually. We want this event to be accessible to everyone, and we want to see the entire conversational AI community there. We also would appreciate your help promoting L3AI. If you tag us on social, we're on LinkedIn and Twitter, and use the hashtag L3AI. We're going to randomly select 10 folks to win a virtual gift card that they can redeem in the Rasa store for limited edition L3AI merch. I personally think our L3AI designs and merch are pretty sweet this year. Shout out to our design team. So yeah, take advantage of this amazing content and opportunity to meet with folks, to meet with Rasa, and to learn how you can build next level customer experiences with conversational AI. I hope to see everyone there. And I'm going to hand things back over to Karen for Q&A.
Cool. Thanks so much, Stacy. So we've had quite a few questions come in so far. We'll bring back all of our panelists for Q&A. So if you have any questions for Alan, Chris, Sam, or Stacy, go ahead and type those into the question window, and we'll just get started. So our first question, Alan, I think I'm going to direct this over to you. So the current Rasa latest image for Docker, is it main full with Rasa version 2.6?
Mm-hmm. So you can always pull the main image if you want, and that is just built every single time we have a new commit merged into the main branch on GitHub. But that's not like a named, tested, stable release. So, you know, that's it's more for internal purposes. So I would always recommend that you use a tagged release. So in this case, 2.6.3-full if you want the full one. Although for most use cases, you don't really need the full one because that has a lot of extra dependencies and language models installed. So I would double check, you know, depending on which pipeline you're using, you probably don't need all of that installed. And you can probably use a smaller, lighter image like 2.6.3 bare or spacey or something like that, depending on what you're using.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Chris, I think this next one is for you. So just a question clarifying like where the configuration for conditional response variation should be added. The question is asking, should it be added in the blog section or on the website? But maybe if you just want to talk a little bit about where you would actually add those conditional response variations in your Rasa assistant.
Yeah, definitely. So you would add them in the domain file where you define responses normally. So everything's happening in the domain, and then you would, when you write your stories, you again would just use the utter actions as you normally would. And there is, so I think if the question is asking about is there further documentation on this on the website, there is. You could check out the link. And I think Karen, you're working on a blog. Yeah. That will explain this feature a bit more. It's definitely an experimental feature right now, but we'll have more documentation about uses and write-ups to come. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, we've got that blog post on the way. And then we just pushed the link to the documentation out on the slides window. So if you click on that link, it should take you to the docs with a few examples that you can kind of use as a pattern to get started. Cool. Thanks, Chris. And then we have a few questions here for Sam about the WebChat widget. So Sam will bring you back and put you in the hot seat for a few of these. Our first question is, does the WebChat widget support buttons and images? Okay.
Shall I just whiz through some of these because I can kind of read them out and go because they're quite short. Yes, yeah, no sure. Answers. Okay. So does it support buttons and images? Yes, it does now. There may be other types of event that it doesn't support. We'll manage those as we do them, but buttons and images it definitely does support. Can we deploy with WordPress? You'll just need to use an HTML snippet. It's just HTML, so you put it on, you put it in WordPress the same way you do it anywhere else. Human handoff feature. If you're doing human handoffs on the server side, then it will work, but we don't have any feature currently for doing a client side a handoff to a different type of server. It's something that we could look into, but it's not certainly not going to be in version 1. When will it be released fully? We're looking to have a version out by this time next week. But what released is it'll be available. Whether it'll be in our documentation on our site, I don't know yet. Is there a way to use it now? No. Come and work at Rasa.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Let's see here. I think we had a question, can radio buttons be added as a button type if Rasa domain method is being used for views? I think we had asked for just a little bit of clarification on that question. So if that was your question, just maybe give us a little bit more information on your use case in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to that. Let's see. We got a question for somebody who is new to Rasa. Does Rasa offer instructor-led trainings? So I'll actually grab that one myself. We've got a few different resources that you can use to get kind of hands-on training with Rasa. If you're somebody who learns better with video, you've got a few options. We have quite a few video tutorials that are created by our DevRel team that are on the Rasa YouTube channel. So definitely head over to YouTube and subscribe, depending on kind of like whether you're into the more like deep dive machine learning side of things or more of like the development side of things. You should be able to find a video series that, kind of speaks to your specialization. We also have a few courses on Udemy, as we have the Rasa for Beginners course on Udemy, which is completely free. It's a 2-hour course, a really good place to get started if you're brand new to Rasa. If you're looking for something that you can take afterwards, it's kind of a little bit more intermediate, I would recommend taking the Rasa certification course on Udemy. Okay, Chris, I'm going to bring you back for our next question. So this one is from Laura. Would you add the channel response variations as conditions, or would the channel variations remain as is?
Great question. Channel variations remain as they are. So you can have separate conditional responses per channel if you'd like.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Alan, I'm going to direct this next one to you. Are there any plans for automating FAQ building using Rasa in the future?
Yeah. So I think I know what the question is, which is if I have a list of FAQs, can I, bootstrap a chatbot from that easily, right? So if you go to our forum, there's a notebook, a Jupyter notebook that our research team shared with the community a little while ago, where they shared a paraphrasing model that they pre-trained, and it works across a few different languages. I can't remember exactly how many. It's about a half a dozen maybe. And what it will do is it will take your questions and paraphrase them and generate sort of potential candidates for new training data, right? So, if you're interested, I could recommend that you check that out. Ultimately, it's a feature that, requires a little bit of data science skill to really figure out what you want to include and what you don't. It doesn't work like magically out of the box, which is why it's still kind of just hovering around as something that we share with the community. But haven't built into a fully fledged feature because, I think what people would really love is like a really robust model that just needs one example per FAQ. And unfortunately, that's, just not the reality. So if you're willing to get stuck in, get your hands dirty, play with the notebook, please, by all means, do. I would love to hear your feedback.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Sam, I'll send this next question over to you. Are there any plans to support card carousels in the WebChat widget?
Yes, but not in the first version. So we'll have to wait a little bit longer for that, but that is something that we are looking at. We're looking at supporting every type of event that is kind of a standard event that comes from Rasa.
Okay, that actually might kind of answer the next question as well, which was, well, maybe this isn't specifically about the WebChat widget. It could be a little more general, but can we have radio buttons and responses rather than normal buttons?
Well, I think once you press a button, it sends a response. So you can't have two. So I don't know what a radio, like the thing that a radio button does is enforce that you select one or the other. But that's already kind of how the buttons work. So
that's a good point.
So I don't know what they might mean by that.
Cool. Thanks for taking that. Let's see. We had a question come in that's a little bit more of a broader discussion. So maybe, Alan, I'll kind of send this over to you. How useful, in your opinion, are FAQs? Like, when do you really have an FAQ which isn't actually part of a dialogue? And, when do users exactly, so basically, kind of what's the difference between an FAQ and a dialogue? And how do you sort of like think about that in terms of dialogue systems and building assistance?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way that we talk about FAQs at Rasa is that an FAQ is a question that always receives the same response, no matter what happened previously in the conversation, right? So it doesn't take any context into account. That's a simplifying assumption. It's a very useful one because it simplifies your dialogue model greatly for those questions. You just don't have to worry about it. But it is a simplifying assumption, and there might be cases that, that assumption really breaks down, and people, have follow-up questions or refer back to something they said earlier or expecting something more sophisticated. And so when you encounter that, but I would really stress when you encounter that in real life, when you're practicing CDD and you're reviewing conversations and you're looking at what people are saying, then that's a great moment to say, okay, this question actually isn't an FAQ. I'm going to promote it to being appropriate intent, and I'm going to write stories around it. But I would only do that once it actually starts to happen, because, if you just try and anticipate all the things that might happen, you'll just drive yourself crazy, and you'll build out a lot of things that users never actually say and never actually experience.
Awesome. It looks like questions are kind of starting to slow down a little bit. Maybe we'll just take one more. Is there any update or news on support for the Apple M1 chip? I know some of this was related to the TensorFlow dependency. I don't know if there's been any kind of movement on that since the last time we checked in.
I'm not super up to date. I'll take the question. If someone else knows better, please jump in. I know it was an active discussion in our Slack inside Rasa this week. Yeah, the information I have as well is that we're kind of reliant on TensorFlow shipping a compatible version that may already exist, at which point we have to migrate to the new version of TensorFlow, which we will certainly do. I'm not sure, I can't give you an estimate of how long that'll be. But we're aware of it, and of course, as more of these devices get sold, the more relevant it becomes for us to make that compatible.
Well, thank you, Alan. Stay tuned, everyone. So it looks like our questions are slowing down at this point, so I think we'll cut it off there. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you so much to our audience and everyone who tuned in today. We will be back here next month with another edition of Beyond the Release Notes with everything that is new in July. So until then, stay safe, take care, have a good rest of your day.